Hey there, today I wanted to go over quarter three books from last year that I read. I know this video is a little late, but all these books were just so good that I didn't want to skip this video and just move on to more current reads. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share some of the books I read from July to September of 2024. So the first one is called I Thought We'd Never Speak Again: The Road from Estrangement to Reconciliation by Laura Davis. And this one was unexpectedly good. I found this kind of more in the self-help genre and thought it could be interesting to explore reconciling relationships and just forgiveness and everything like that. And this book was actually just a really quick read. So I got through it in a matter of a couple days. It really just went through all these various stories, including the authors of, reconciling relationships. And what was interesting about it is it's not what you would think it would be. It wasn't, all these people who were like married and broke up or whatnot. A book on forgiveness I read earlier in the year was, but this book was more so just any kind of relationship. And it was interesting because some of them are relationships you would think would be reconciled, right? Like a family member, a friend, a prior spouse, whatnot. But some were actually things that you wouldn't think about. So there were stories in the book where someone was in jail because they committed a crime, but then they ended up making up with the person they committed the crime against. Or there was two different groups of people who were like their ancestors were at war together, and so they already had these preconceived thoughts about each other, and just showing their journey of reconciliation as well, even though they had never met each other. So it just gave me a lot to think about, a lot of ways of relationships or even cultures that were broken finding a way to heal again. And I think that this is a read for everybody, even if you're not trying to reconcile a relationship, even if you're not even thinking about forgiveness or whatnot. It was just so eye opening in the process, and these true stories and the healing people have found or choosing not to reconcile and what that process looked like. So I think there's just more beneath the surface to this book than you would think, and it gave a really holistic view on reasons people do decide to do this, reasons they don't, and just really extreme situations as well. So I thought it was a really good read. It was definitely worth reading, and that was the first book I started off with in quarter three. Now, going on to the next book, Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. This is actually a pretty popular book. If you are kind of into reading, you've probably seen this book before. And I actually really, really liked it. So there's parts of it that I didn't like. There was a lot of spicy scenes that I didn't feel like related to the plot. So I didn't actually give this book 5 stars, but I've thought about it so much since reading it, probably more so than most books I have given 5 stars, just because of how relatable the main character was in this book specifically. I do think it's something that I am going to reread just because I resonated with it so much. This is part of a larger series called A Court of Thorns and Roses, and the first, I think it's 3 books and a novella, follow a different main character, but this one switches over to the previous main character's sister. And I thought she was actually more relatable than the main character in these other books. Right now, in her life and her story, when this book is released, she's healing from a lot of trauma that she's experienced. She's in a really bad place emotionally, mentally, and she's so relatable. She was ruining relationships, being super self destructive, like just in this funk where she didn't even care what happened to her. She was just kind of getting through the day, and the people around her really noticed that, hey, this isn't sustainable and she can't keep living like this. So they had this little intervention where they pulled her aside and gave her some guidelines she had to follow in order to still live in this city with them. And so she just becomes so much stronger throughout the book. You see this evolution, this journey that she didn't really want to go on, but she ends up going on. And I'm not going to spoil like the whole book or the ending, but I did want to read some quotes from this just because I want to show you guys how relatable this book was. And if you resonate, this may be a good book for you. Here's some quotes that I really resonated with, and I'll just read them off the screen. So one of them says, I am worthless, I am nothing, Nesta nearly said. She wasn't sure why the words bubbled up, pressing on her lips to voice them. I hate everything that I am. I am so, so tired. I'm tired of anywhere but in my own head. I thought this was super relatable in those moments where you're just so trapped in your mind. And then the next one is Amryn put a hand above Nesta's heart. That's the key, isn't it? To know the darkness will always remain, but how you choose to face it, handle it, that's the important part. To not let it consume, to focus upon the good, the things that fill you with wonder. She gestured to the stars zooming past. The struggle with that darkness is worth it, just to see such things. So again, this one I think was just really reassuring for, if you are going through those places where you have a lot of dark thoughts, that it's not necessarily something to run from. This one, never again would she be weak, never again would she be at someone's mercy, never again would she fall, never again, never again, never again. This just kind of really goes through the book. She's trying to become the stronger version of herself, and I think in the beginning that meant just shutting everybody out and kind of just doing her own thing, but she really throughout the book grows as a person and starts letting people in again. And then the last one I'll read is, I'm going to tell you that you will get through it, that you will face this, that you will get through it, that these tears are good, Nesta. These tears mean you care. I'm going to tell you that it's not too late for any of it. And I can't tell you when or how, but it will get better. What you feel, this guilt and pain and self-loathing, you will get through it. But only if you're willing to fight. Only if you are willing to face it and embrace it and walk through it to emerge on the other side of it. And maybe you will still feel that tinge of pain, but there is another side, a better side. So this was kind of in the middle of the book when the main character is at a really dark point. And she just is so upset with herself over feeling this trauma, over regret that she had been through. But I really like that the characters in this book were so supportive. I think it's really, really good for mental health. And if you're going through any trauma and working through things, just to show that people can be around you and you can get through it. And so I really, really loved this book. Again, A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. I think this was my favorite in the series, even though I didn't rank it as my favorite, because I think there were so many unnecessary scenes. But overall, the heart of the book was just amazing. All right, going on to the next book. So this is Legend, Prodigy, Champion, and Rebel by Marie Lu. So this is actually a young adult series. I listened to it while walking, so it was just really nice to have some earphones in and distract myself from walking with a book that was super easy to follow. I kind of go back and forth between reading books physically, either like a physical copy or on my Kindle, and then listening to books. So this was really great to just listen to while out and about. It was just super intriguing. I loved the plot. You have this really good prodigy kind of girl who is at this elite school and ranked super high in the test, and then you have this rebel boy character who is super smart but running from the authorities, and you just see how both of them have challenges, even though you wouldn't necessarily, like, you'd think that she doesn't but he does, but how they end up connecting and how they end up growing through the series. I think it was really good just to see these young characters be able to deal with very difficult things and come out on the other side. And they have really strong morals, which I really like. They're not afraid to take a stand on things that aren't popular in the book. And I think it's just a really good lighthearted read that I'd recommend if you're looking for that kind of series. Okay. The next series I read, again, this was kind of just a lighthearted, get through them pretty quickly read, is the One of Us is Lying, One of Us is Next, and One of Us is Back by Karen McManus. Again, this is another young adult series. I didn't actually expect to really like these books. I kind of just read it because it was available, the first one, but it seemed like the characters were really real. And what I'll say by that is they had flaws, they owned up to the flaws, they learned from them. You could see them evolving throughout the series, and they just ended up communicating with each other when things fell short. It was fast-paced mystery. Again, it reminded me a lot of Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and I think this is something you can listen to and not fully be focused on, but still get the gist of the plot, still get attached to the characters. And it was a really quick read. I think all three of them I read in less than a month, and it just kept you going. And I think if you're in any sort of like reading slump, or you're just looking for something to take you really quickly through a series, this is a good one as well. Okay. Next book was Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. You'll recognize the author from the what's it called? Court of Silver Flames. So this one I wanted to read this series because I did finish the other series, and I don't necessarily know if she's my favorite author, but I just really connected with that last book, and I heard that this was a really good series for a strong female lead. And so I got into this, and it felt like a fantasy Hunger Games. The lead character is very strong, comes from like a troubled past, but she's trying to get through this competition to earn a role and prove herself. So I didn't actually love this book, I would say. It kind of fell short for me because it felt like something I had read before and kind of meshed together. And honestly, the first book in A Court of Thorns and Roses felt the same way. I have since read the second book, and I'm not going to review it on this book review, but I will on the next. And I'm much more interested in the series now. But I would say this book kept me going because it was exciting enough, but the plot kind of fell a little short for me. I wasn't super attached to any of the characters either, but I saw enough promise to continue in the series here. And then the last book I will review for this time is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. So this book was just beautiful. Like, the quotes in it were amazing. I fell in love with this book. It was probably one of my top reads of the year. Recommended it to everybody who I know loves to read because it was just such a beautiful plot. There were two people, kind of enemies, and they end up connected through this magical typewriter. And I really like quotes, I really like written language, everything like that. So being able to see them communicate with each other, being able to see them through a time of war, being able to see their emotions and just the honesty between them was so, so good. And I think the fantasy elements tied in so well to this book too. So, going in, I'll go ahead and read a few quotes from this book as well, just to pique your interest in case this book is calling to you guys. So, these again were a couple of my favorite quotes. So, do you ever feel as if you wear armor day after day? That when people look at you, they see only the shine of steel that you've so carefully encased yourself in. They see what they want to see in you, the warped reflection of their own face, or a piece of sky, or a shadow cast between buildings. They see all the times you've made mistakes, all the times you've failed, all the times you've hurt them or disappointed them, as if that is all you will ever be in their eyes. How do you change something like that? How do you make your life your own and not feel guilt over it? And then the second quote that I really liked is sometimes I'm afraid to love other people. Everyone I care about eventually leaves me, whether it's death or war, or simply because they don't want me. They go places I can't find, places I can't reach, and I'm not afraid to be alone, but I'm tired of being the one left behind. I'm tired of having to rearrange my life after the people within it depart, as if I'm a puzzle, and I'm now missing pieces, and I will never feel that pure sense of completion again. So I think that this kind of gives you a little overview into what the letters look like, what the communication between the characters look like, and if it's something you want to read. But yeah, this is my book review for quarter 3 of 2024. I'll be doing another video on the books I read in quarter 4 of 2024, and then just some more book videos in general. So let me know if you guys have read any of these books, what you think of them. If you have any book recommendations that you want me to review, please let me know. And thanks for being here, and see you in the next video.